Simon, you got to tell me how you landed on this story, because I mean, I run into people every day. I don't know what I want to do a podcast on, but you see something like this, Dear Alana, and it's like, Simon, where were you to even get in touch with this?
Yeah, so I had read about Dear Alana. Well, sorry, backtracking. Dear Alana is about a young woman named Alana Chen who went missing and passed away, unfortunately, by suicide in 2019 in Boulder, Colorado. And she had a lot of really interesting things going on about her. She was this kind of A+ student. She also had an interesting dream of wanting to become a nun since she was a young teenager. But she had a secret about her sexuality, and that ended up leading her to pursue conversion therapy, also in secret behind her family's back. And when she passed, I read about her story in the news. And I remember I was sitting in a coffee shop and I was just shaking and crying because I recognized so many of the parallels to my own story. I had pursued conversion therapy throughout my 20s in my attempt to become a Catholic priest, and just saw a lot of commonality in, at least the way it was reported in her story. And so I kind of got my wits about me and started looking for her family on Facebook to see if I could reach out in any way. Found her mother and sent her a note just to share a little bit of my own background and offer any support, and wasn't expecting a reply at all. And eventually, a few months later, we got on the phone to talk for the first time. And it was then that I learned more about her daughter, Alana. And that began a kind of texting and phone call relationship for like the next year and a half. And at that point, there was no podcast in the picture at all. I'm not a podcaster, and that was not a thought in my head. But fast forward to 2 years ago, I was lying in bed awake at night, and it was 2 a.m. and Alana's story just kept on haunting me. I felt like there was so much more to learn about her, and ended up having this idea to maybe explore that and document that in audio. And so that began the journey of, obviously asking her family if that would be okay. And they were enthusiastically supportive of that. And they ended up opening their doors to me, and eventually also gave me all access to all of her journals, all the journals Alana left behind.
You are so lucky. Oh my God. I love looking at other people's handwriting.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's really intimate, and obviously a tremendous responsibility to accurately portray and to be sensitive about that. Yeah.
Let me only because I want to think like a listener. When we talk about conversion, I'm sure some of my listeners may think, oh, they're going from sinner to preacher, or to a rabbi to some sort of leader. Conversion is sexuality. I think if I've got it nailed right, we have a lot of that, or had a lot of that here in North Carolina. They think they can change somebody and their sexuality.
Yeah. So conversion therapy is a term that was kind of coined, I think in the late 80s, early 90s, to describe practices that have existed for quite a long time, really, very, very early in the history and development of psychology, in that a lot of people took Freud's psychoanalytic ideas and which is the idea that we are who we are because of our relationship to our parents. And they kind of ran with that, even though Freud himself didn't think it was possible to change someone's sexual orientation. A lot of people felt like they could. And so the idea is, in a lot of the theories and the ways that it's still practiced today, it's to put the blame or the origin of sexual orientation and development on these childhood experiences, and in particular traumas that people may have had with their parent or sometimes with peers, and to try to use that to explain why people are gay. And I can go into more of the theory, but essentially that informed a lot of the therapeutic advice that Alana and myself, that we sought in our quests to follow our dreams. And I think this is, the podcast aims to show the side of it, which looks a lot more like talk therapy, because when people hear conversion therapy, they often think about the ways it's depicted in Hollywood, which can be very dramatized and be this sort of, fundamentalist, like Jesus camp kind of thing. But it doesn't have to look that way. And I think that's one of the reasons why it, why it persists, and one of the reasons why a lot of people seek it out for themselves.
What's really interesting about this, Simon, is that as I listen to the podcast, because I really do while I'm driving to work and things, and that is that I feel like that this right here is your calling in the way of, you made it to the church. It's you just don't have the walls of the church around you. You've got the community around you, and you're reaching people that are sitting silently in their bedrooms listening to this podcast going, oh my God, this is about me.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's been amazing to hear the feedback, the messages. I haven't been able to keep up with them because a lot of people resonate with the, the story. And as you mentioned, it is like, I did want to create it first and foremost for those people like myself and Alana, who often feel so, this real deep inner conflict in wanting to be faithful to these what seem like conflicting parts of our identities, and I think a lot of people can relate to obviously that very specific struggle, but more broadly, I think what's been interesting is a lot of people have written to me who haven't shared these experiences and have found in kind of the vulnerability that we share in the podcast, just a very like human story of coming of age, of wanting to find belonging, and the lengths that we might go to achieve that.
I would love to watch the numbers that you're going to be getting on this worldwide, only because I've talked with authors as well as actors and people who are openly LGBTQ, and they're in countries such as Italy, Greece, India. It's illegal for them to do what their lifestyle, to make that choice to say, I'm going to be me. And a podcast like this says you can be you. Yes, Alana Chen did have a rough time. So do others. But you now that you're aware of it, grow and become a stronger self.
Yeah. I mean, what's been amazing is it has, there has been a global support. I've had people reaching out to me from, some obviously some of the Western countries like New Zealand and Australia, but from the charts, we do see that we are impacting other places where yeah, like you mentioned, it can still be illegal to live one's life as a gay person, and I think what's been heartening is, yeah, certainly the response, as you mentioned, like we've had over 1 million downloads. We hit #1 in the first week, and it's been incredible to see that response in the charts. But some of the human stories that people are writing to me about are really heartbreaking. People who are very much still in situations where they can't disclose this information, where they really can relate to that struggle of trying to fit into their communities. And also, interestingly, people who've written to thank me for not, in a way, pursuing that life that I might have tried to pursue, which is to maybe try to change my orientation and maybe get into a relationship or a marriage, with somebody that I wasn't compatible with. And that, unfortunately, some people are dealing with those kinds of situations right now, and they're in their marriages. And so, yeah, it's been really eye-opening to hear from a lot of different people.
I did you keep a journal while you were doing this? And the only, because I'm a journal writer. I've got daily writing all the way back 29 years. And when I jump into something as serious as this, did you keep a journal so that you could document your path or create breadcrumbs?
I did. I've also been a diligent journal keeper, as was Alana. Alana was so prolific. She left behind 20 journals and over 1,200 pages. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, very much in that same vein, I kept a journal, and sort of documented the ups and downs and the uncertainties throughout making this project, because my original plan when I started was to not be in it. I mean, in the sense that I really wanted to just tell Alana's story from a really, sort of third party detached kind of perspective. And the more I was, making episodes and starting to get feedback, it became really clear. People really wanted to know, like, who are you? Like, why should we listen to you? Why should we trust you? What do you have to do with this story? And I just kind of got, successively more drawn into it. And as you'll hear, I end up really sharing pretty in a way, things that were formerly very I felt really ashamed of in my life, or really embarrassed about, because I really hadn't shared this kind of path that I had been on with very many people in my life. I had kept it pretty secret because it just felt so embarrassing and like something that I, was sort of in the past. And so, yeah, a lot of this project has been me revisiting my past and looking at it with a new lens.
One of the things that I see in this story is I believe that Alana was doing exactly what I try to do all the time. Dear future reader, she knew you were coming along. She couldn't physically produce it in that moment when that ink was hitting that page, but dear future reader, and hey, it's Simon.
Oh my gosh, that just sent chills up my spine. I think one of the challenges when I was given the opportunity to read her journals, there was a real ethical dilemma, because, more often than not, we're writing journals in private, right, for ourselves, very much like not expecting anyone to read them. And so we are pretty unfiltered, and, we'll be processing all of our thoughts, and it can be, we can talk about really sensitive things. And that certainly was the case in Alana's journals. But what gave me a little bit of, some amount of comfort was reading several passages that she had written about how, A, she felt so unseen throughout her life. Mm-hmm. She felt like nobody really knew her. And B, she hoped that, she had this sort of passing thought that maybe one day someone would find these journals. And when I read that, I felt like, oh my goodness, like, I wonder if Alana also did want to, it seemed like she did also want deeply to be seen and to be known. And she wanted her voice to be heard.
Was there a guilt trip with her sneaking out to church? Because I snuck out to church as a kid. I didn't want my parents to know I was doing it. I didn't want anybody to know that I was sneaking out to go to church every Sunday morning. And even today I go, why did I keep that hidden away from my family? I could have brought something back to them.
Yeah. Alana was similar to you. She her family, well, I'm not sure what your background was, but her family was not particularly religious. Right. But she discovered the church in her early teenage years, and ended up sneaking out behind her family's back, telling her parents she was going to her friend's house to study, but instead taking the bus to go to church daily. And yeah, this went on for a period when, until her conscience caught up to her and she came clean to her mother about what she was doing. And, so yeah, she very much did that. And I think the story really illuminates how, how, especially at that age, like, we are looking for places and communities that help us feel, like safe and give us a sense of identity and help us, find some amount of certainty in the world. And I think Alana found that early on.
What's really interesting about this, only because I come from that spiritual world, and thank God in heaven I get to be a part of it. And that is that she wanted to be a priest. And I'm going, oh my God, I would have never thought a priest. Isn't that strange? I mean, strange, but very inspiring.
Absolutely. Yeah. Alana wanted to be a nun, since she was a young teenager, and her, she writes a lot about just that, having that kind of connection to God, serving God in that way, and sort of devoting her life to service in that way. She had a deep love of the poor and the unhoused. She would, often go under the bridge in Boulder and serve lunch and read and just hang out with the people that were homeless on the streets, in her community. And so she really had a heart for that kind of service and that kind of life. And that's something that is certainly unusual and pretty rare, but I think shows you just kind of how exceptional she was as a person.
Let me ask you kind of a personal question, because I don't want to have a spoiler alert or anything like that for people to tune into this podcast. But when she fell into her deepest, darkest moments, was it an opportunity to feel unnumb? And then what happened is what happened.
Yeah. Sorry, you said unnumb, like
unnumb,
to numb.
Yeah, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm so depressed. I'm so numb." Well, numb is still a feeling, but we have to try to deaden that numbness with a feeling, so we can go, okay, now I identify the feeling.
Yeah, I mean, for those who will listen, there's certainly some trigger warnings around the topic of self-harm and the topic of suicide. Because yes, Alana really struggled with depression and anxiety and thoughts in those directions. And I think that this is a really serious, mental health matter. And I think that there are certainly many resources for those who are considering this to look at, especially the national hotline 988.
That's it.
But it is unfortunately something a lot of us struggle with, and we talk about that. And I think one of the things that is unique about Dear Alana is that we really see that unfolding over time, and in her own words.
Writing and podcasting, I'm going to openly admit this, service therapy for me. What about you, dude?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I didn't, obviously I wanted to tell this story, very specific story, but in the process, as you say, like there was something that was also happening in my own life with just revisiting my past and looking at how, a lot of these stories happening to other people really give us a lot of empathy into not only their lives, but our own, right? We see our own lives with a different perspective. It's like, oh yeah, oh my God, that's what I was going through too. And like, she's putting words to things that I didn't realize I was feeling the same way until she articulated in that way. And I think, in that same way that Alana was doing that, after her death in many ways, through making this show, my hope is that the podcast can be that help also to other people.
Do you still remember the texture of the paper? Because I'm a paper whore. That paper has to be the right thing. And when you go in there and you're reading somebody else's handwriting, oh my God, the depth and the pressure that you put into that page.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Yeah, Alana had different kinds of journal papers, but yes, I remember the thinness of the paper. I remember, the density of the writing and the ink and the, the things that were crossed out. It's so vivid and visual, and hopefully, we can capture some of that in the story as you hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Because I can hear your emotion. I can feel your emotion. And dude, once again, dear future reader, this is one of those moments.
Absolutely. Yes. It's incredible to be able to get so intimate, with a person and really get into inner parts of our lives, right, that we often don't talk about and share with the world. And yeah, Dear Alana is one of those stories where I think everyone listening will be stretched to yeah, engage with some of those inner parts of our lives.
Oh my God, I want to talk to you all day. You got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I'd love to do that.
Well, you be brilliant today. Okay, sir?
Thank you so much, Arrow. You too. You too. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.